Welcome to the show where we expose new perspectives on our ever-evolving world through the lenses of various industries, cultures, and backgrounds. Our guests are disruptors, united by a common goal, to bring their purpose to life. Whether they're from the commercial world or third sector, from the global north or the global south, expect an inspirational journey that will transform your perspective on just what is possible. My name is Philippa White, and welcome to Thai Unearthed. In 2001, just after 9/11, I moved to London after finishing my business degree on an exchange program in Bangkok, Thailand. It was a tricky economic time, but I was determined to get a job in advertising. After a successful interview, I was hired by Chris Norman, one of the directors of then Ideas Unlimited. But the chapter that I joined them at was just the start of an extraordinary story for the small business. At the time that I worked for them, the agency was run by 3 directors. Chris Norman was the director that I worked with, as he looked after the not-for-profit part of the portfolio. The other 2 directors looked after the commercial brands, such as events, horse shows, property, and luxury goods. As the company evolved, the not-for-profit arm of the business grew to about 90% of the business. Chris was always interested in promoting more of a human-to-human approach to business, a connection to humanity and values, not just self-interest and commercial outcomes. The focus on the not-for-profit clients seemed like the only way to realize this mission. But then, things started to take an interesting turn. He realized there was a better way. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to episode 77 of Thai Unearthed. Today we're speaking with Chris Norman, founder and CEO of Good Agency, a pioneer of brand purpose, and has worked for the last 28 years across the commercial, government, and charity sectors, helping them create value from the positive impact that they can have on the world. Chris was included in the 2019 Progress 1000 as one of the 25 most influential people in London in media, and is a regular judge and panellist. Chris's breadth of experience is with the largest commercial and charity brands, and his story and experience is fascinating. So throw on those running shoes or grab that favorite beverage, and here's Chris.
Chris, thank you so much for joining me here today. It is just so great to have you with us.
My pleasure.
Before we go any further, just if you could tell our listeners just where you are, because I just think it's quite nice for people to be able to picture it.
Yeah. I'm in Southwark, in London, south side of the river, in London, sunny London.
So now I don't get to ask this very often. And I think you are the first person that I've interviewed that I've actually worked for. We are talking a long time ago, but it is a fun way to start. So I'm just wondering, what is your first memory of me?
I reckon everyone will have the same memory of you as well. Energy, positivity, and smile.
Oh,
that was it. It was just such a ball of energy when you met, and it almost, you kind of bowled people over and going, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
It was exciting. It was really exciting. I thought, actually, that person's going to get stuff done, because it's nothing kind of stands in the way. It was great.
Well, as I said just before we started, thank you. Before we started recording, I've just finished writing your section in my book. I got to go back and remember that was my first proper job in England, and just remembering walking in. I remember sitting close to you. I just remember the energy as well within the office. All of the, Candida and Katie and Laura and Simon and So
what year was that?
That was 2001.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, better move on. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Before we talk about the incredible story that is Good, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about you before Ideas Unlimited, which is obviously the story before Good, and just how you got into this space and why does it interest you?
Yeah, I suppose I had a kind of sense of social injustice, and I was kind of angry about the world growing up, because I could see things going on which kind of upset me, I suppose, as a child, the way I saw injustice. And I was kind of early to kind of read things like The Ecologist magazine, because there was some incredible journalism around environmental issues in the late 70s and early 80s, which weren't really topical, but it was, got my interest. And then there's people like John Pilger, who was a journalist, who I think is still around. He wrote a book called Heroes, which had a profound effect on me in terms of wanting to change things, belief in wanting to change. And also Anita Roddick and her autobiography and just her story as well. She wrote her, I think it's called Heart and Soul, and just what was behind these people, that they saw something that didn't feel right and they went and did something about it. And so I was in a couple of other sectors doing badly and not being inspired, and thought, actually, this is, I want to be able to affect change. And I genuinely believe that communications is the strongest weapon of change. And I think there are some brilliant ideas out there, but unless they're communicated in a clear, concise, compelling way, they just won't do anything. They'll just stay there and die. The idea will die. So it was really how to use communication to affect change, because I felt that was my skill set. So how do I apply that to affect change?
Yeah. So can you then tell us about Good and perhaps a little bit about the story of the company? What is your point of difference, and, how did it come about?
Yeah, so it's kind of evolved. So we started, there were 4 partners starting out, and we kind of each chose a sector. And I chose to do the kind of cause-led not-for-profits and work with businesses. In those days, it was in CSR. They were trying to demonstrate their good, but in those days, it was to try and defend shareholder value. CSR was a defensive mechanism. The other person who inspired me, just going back to what inspired me, was how could I bring down Milton Friedman and all his thinking? He's the worst thing that happened to this planet and society since, I don't know, Beelzebub. But it was just seeing where the enemy was and who was creating a world that wasn't actually an inclusive world. It wasn't and I come from a very privileged background. I get that, but you can see the injustice around and the imbalance and inequality. And so I, with these other partners, I chose to work in this area where I was going to use communication to affect change through not-for-profits, lots and lots of charities, but also try and get businesses to leverage their good. How, you should be able to be a successful business and also do good. And that was a kind of maybe a naive belief in 95. And that part of the business just grew so rapidly and so quickly that became the business. And it then really became the biggest and the best in that field.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing.
And in terms of our point of difference, I think our point of difference, it stems from the founding principles of actually that you can do good and be successful, and that holding on to that idea that purpose is in everything. Every single thing you think about, you should be able to apply a level of purpose and values, connecting people. We talk about human to human, not B to C or whatever it is, but human to human is what we are all about. Everything we have is connected to how it impacts other people's lives, and not necessarily directly, but indirectly. So it's really important that you talk about the indirect as well. So I would say the other thing that makes us unusual is we most probably turn down more business than we've actually accepted. Businesses will come and ask us to frame their good, and all they're looking for is just a communication solution there or brand solution. They're not looking actually to demonstrate their good. So the value of purpose is in the demonstration, not the claim. And so we don't really care that much about the money, which is a kind of odd thing to say, but we have to be profitable to continue to grow and to have an impact. But that's not the first thought. We don't think about that. And we actually think about what is the impact we can have. And then we go, okay, have they got the resource to do it? Do they demonstrate that as well? Are they committed to that? So that's our kind of our thought process is.
But what would be really helpful, I think, for the listeners, when you talk about a company that would go to you and that isn't demonstrating impact, What would be an example of a company that is demonstrating impact? What is that kind of company, or what do you need to know before you can then work with them? What does that look like?
So it's interesting because we will talk to anyone if they want to talk about purpose. We'll talk to anyone. And what we don't do is kind of judge them first. Because if a fossil fuel company came to talk to us and said, we'd like to talk to you about purpose, and we go, okay, we'll listen. And if we don't think they're committed to actually affecting change and changing themselves, what they can't do is just change outside and not change themselves. But if this fossil fuel company said, right, we're dropping oil totally, and we're going to go into a totally renewable space, we'd say, great, we'll help you on your journey. But if they say, we would like to tell everyone about our renewable activity, and we go, great, that's quite exciting. Can you tell me what percentage of your R&D is in renewable versus investing in fossil fuels? And if they say 0.3%, we'll say we're not interested, because all you're doing is using that as a greenwash and a veneer to try and win the emotional battle, which you're losing, or you lost, actually.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. Now, when we met in London not long ago, a couple months ago, or last month, I was explaining obviously my book, Return on Humanity. And it's very much rooted in this world of being in this really jargony word that I can't stand, but it's the only word right now that I can figure out how to kind of communicate, is human-centric. Now, I'm actually trying to redefine that in the book because it is a lot of jargon. At the end of the day, obviously, a more human company and more human leaders. That's what we're talking about in our book. And again, human is a loaded word as well, considering in this sort of AI world. From the point of view of being human-centric, why is being a more human company or a more human leader, why is that important from your point of view? And what does that mean to you and the work you do? I think that would be really helpful to. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting, having worked in the space for 28 years. We can see the change, and I think in the 90s and the noughties there was a starting shift. There started a shift from people engaged with, say, for a job, just for the remuneration and benefits. That changed to remuneration and benefits and what are your values. There's quite an interesting correlation between the launch of the World Wide Web in 94 and the transparency that gave us, with people being concerned about how they were judged on the brands they bought, where they worked, how they behaved. Because then actually they were conscious that everything they did was a reflection of themselves. The internet was kind of, it made people very much more conscious of that. In those days, we talked about value and values. You just turn that into kind of human. So people's values is what we're now connecting with, whether it be as an employee, as an investor, as a consumer, as a member of the community, as civil society. It's everything about that is values. Now, when we look at a company and we rebrand companies around a purpose, we no longer use the term values, because if you go to employees and say, right, these are our values, these are our corporate values, I mean, say, well, those are corporate values, they're not human values. So,
like, what do you feel? It's like the essence.
Exactly. So we've changed that into behaviours. So we now write behaviours, and there are values within that, they're imbued within that. But actually, it's so much easier for people to understand behaviours than it is values. And that's, as you say, it is the essence of an organization, and we don't behave like that, we behave like this. And that's why we do it. So I think human is connecting deeply into what people care about, what they feel, as opposed to just what they think and they do. And that's a very different way of doing that. Because I think the world has changed into a much more led by empathy and emotion rather than just by the rational. I think that's what people are looking. They're looking to connect with their values through everything they do now.
Yeah, that emotion, that essence, the emotion's interesting, and behavior's interesting, because it kind of comes back to what you were talking about. Any company saying that they're doing something, but you need to walk the walk, or walk the talk. Sorry. And that authenticity, and that's through behavior. It's through what you're actually doing, isn't it?
It is, and you feel cheated, and that's an emotion. You feel cheated if they suddenly find out they've been lying to you.
Yeah,
and so, or you feel slightly cheated that you trusted them, and you find that they have got something horrible in their supply chain. So it's much, much stronger now than it has ever been. And it's going to get stronger, I think.
Yeah. And it's interesting, actually, because in my book, I talk a lot about human leadership, and then I talk about human companies. But I think when you're talking about emotion, again, it's how a leader makes you feel working on that team, and it's how a company makes you feel. If a company makes you feel good, and actually it's genuine, you feel it. And particularly, as you said about the internet, I mean, the internet's now making that very transparent. So you can figure things out very, very, you can't hide.
Yeah, that transparency is an incredible tool and weapon. Yeah. But I think that's why we are good. We always start with feel, think, and do. We don't start with think, feel, and do. It's feel, think, and do. But your feelings are the first reaction, and then you'll post-rationalize that, and then you'll act on it. So, but we are driven by feelings. So it's and just to say that we think that it sounds soft, but it's not. We think kindness is the strongest superpower in the world that pretty much solves a lot of the problems, or stops people to think, is this the kindest thing to do, or is this going to be unkind? And it is just such a strong superpower.
I couldn't agree more. That's like the crux of my book. And that it's funny, isn't it? Because before, when we were back in CSR territory, it was sort of this one division within a company to kind of just tick boxes. And that time, these were the softer skills. They were kind of the softer skills that people didn't really pay attention to. What we're recognizing now is actually these softer skills, they lead to lawsuits. If you don't have them.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, they're not actually as unimportant as perhaps people saw previously. They lead to more competitive companies. And if you don't have them, they lead to, not so positive outcomes.
Yeah, and there was an interesting thing most probably in the 2007-8 and time around there, that it started becoming difficult to hire for banks, because who wanted to work in the banking world? Just the big judgment on it. They do some good stuff, and there's some lovely people in there, but the reputation changed that. And the same thing's now happened to all the Facebook and Google. They're just toxic brands, because it makes you feel bad. They're just exploiting. They've gone too far. They're not actually thinking about their impact on the world. They're just taking over the world, like Amazon and the rest of it. So it's quite interesting how that's shaping society more, not just businesses, but shaping society more. And people, I hope and I believe that they're actually going to start thinking and how you're making people feel more as a business, rather than just providing a service or a product.
Yeah. Now, Good is a B Corp. For those who don't know what B Corp is, a better corporation, which maybe you want to define what a B Corp is, just so that people can know.
Well, it's an interesting journey, because if you're going to say we've been B Corp and we've been champions for a long time, we haven't. So we came to B Corp very late, because we didn't believe in it. Because all we did was saw another accreditation scheme. And the problem with accreditation scheme is, once you've got them, tick the box and that job done. And what we want to do is push through and go further and further. And we didn't like the kind of the labeling of it. And it's become a kind of boasting label. Look at us, aren't we good? So what we decided was we were going to hold back until we thought we were ready to do B Corp. We weren't going to, we're the good agency. We've got a very, very small footprint. We do lots of good stuff, but we thought we could do better. And we just kept on holding back. So we then said, right, okay, we're ready. We'll go for it. And we went for it end of last year, beginning of this year. And we became the highest ranked B Corp in the creative field and agency world in the UK. So
did you?
So that, we got up, I think our score was 158. The average is about 90 or something. So, but we just, and we're now looking at further things now. We're saying, okay, fine, B Corp, we'll carry on doing that. We want to push it. And B Corp doing the same as well. I mean, to give them their credit, they're brilliant. They really are good. And what our kind of ignorance of the scheme is, it's not just an accreditation scheme. They are driving you forward. You have got targets and you're pushing it. But we just wanted to make sure we were in a fit state to really, because we're called good, for goodness sake. We've really got to be the best at doing what we're doing. And that's the expectation. So they set up a framework that evaluates a company's ambition, not just where they are in a social impact and environmental impact in the world, their ambition in terms of this social environmental impact. That's the difference, I think, from other accreditation schemes. Other accreditation schemes just measure where you are. Mm-hmm. What B Corp is saying, okay, well, measure where you are, that's fine, but actually, what is your ambition? Where are you going further? And I think that's the exciting bit. And that wasn't very clear when they first came over here. And that's why when we first had conversations with them, we said, well, it's not clear that this is about driving a better future, other than the fact that you're a very good accreditation scheme. So it's a measure of ambition in a broader context and purpose, but ultimately on very specific social and environmental measures.
Yeah. You are also now employee owned. Why have you decided to make that company structure also a reality? What I find fascinating, because you've always challenged a lot of things. You've always been somebody who has your beliefs, and there's no way anyone's going to say that you're not living out that purpose. Mm-hmm. Whatever, challenges you face along the way, it certainly hasn't been easy, and I've witnessed it. I mean, it's just extraordinarily inspirational. There's not a lot of companies that choose to be employee owned. And I'm just, it takes the power away from you. And, I know that you've got a council now, employee council.
Yeah.
Maybe you can just talk to people about that decision.
Yeah, it was driven by two things. One, it was getting increasingly uncomfortable to be owned by one person, which was me. And that just didn't feel right with the amount of work we were doing and all, yes, it didn't feel like it was all the sharing of the benefits. It wasn't clear. We did a lot of that in terms of giving people bonuses and things like that, but that's kind of a financial thing. But it didn't feel right. So that was one part of it. But the main part of it was succession planning in terms of having done it for 28 years, hopefully doing it for another few years. But what happens to good is never about an individual. It's never been about an individual. When we first started, we were talking about, do we put names and our initials on the door? It's just not that. That's just not us. So how do we ensure the future of good going forward without being subsumed by a big network or a private equity group or things like that? And the best way we thought of doing that was transferring control to the staff. And it's been a really interesting exercise because nothing really changes overnight because we're still operating as we were operating. But what does change is decision making. Mm. And we have to now think as a board, we have to now think we are accountable to the staff for our decisions. And what is the right thing in terms of the interest of the staff. So we have both what's the interest of the society and the planet. That's what we do with all our clients. And now it's also what is the interest of our staff, because it's in their interest as well to make us a success. So it was really two things. One, controlled by one person wasn't right, it didn't feel right. And secondly, the succession to ensure the future of good.
I know that defining purpose is obviously important to you in the work that you do with your clients. When we spoke the last time, you said marketing and sales lacks meaning if it doesn't have purpose. Now, I was at an event for a financial services industry thing in London. This was 2002, can't remember when, probably this time last year. And the event was basically talking about purpose and the importance of purpose. And then at the event, it was a whole lot of marketing people that were there. And someone said, yeah, but we're aware that we're going into a recession. And it's great that we're having this event and we're talking about all these great things. But I think we all know that it's a bit of a waste of time because purpose is going to take a back seat. I think it was one of the speakers that said that. And then everyone was like, yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think I was speaking next. And so I gave my spiel, but then I picked up on that. And I said, see, this is exactly what I don't agree with. And if you all believe this, then you don't understand what purpose is or why a company needs it or even, what it looks like. So everyone was saying, yeah, business is just going to go back to business as usual. And when we met in London, we spoke about this and I was fascinated with your response because when I was in London a few months ago, we're still in this recession. There's cost of living crisis. So many people are scared about AI. There's just so much going on. Mm. And if purpose was going to take a back seat, it would be now. And I wanted to know how you guys were doing, seeing as your whole business is kind of focused on that. And I just want to know your thoughts regarding this. How has your experience been with purpose taking a back seat?
The Campaign magazine headline about 2010 said, well, that was enough of purpose. Let's get on with selling stuff. And every year, purpose has got bigger. Every other year, they say, well, that was enough of that stuff. Let's get on to doing something else. I mean, it is not a marketing concept. Purpose is actually a philosophy in terms of how you operate as a business, how you engage with society, how you engage with the environment. So it's a fundamental flaw to think that, the purpose is just about brand. You need to communicate it, you need to leverage it, but just very, very quickly, there are 3 levers of purpose. The first one, how have we got to where we are? Scarcity of supply. In the 90s, people started saying, well, hold on a minute. The Rio Earth Summit, it started saying, we're in trouble here. We can see where we're going. We see the trajectory. Businesses started saying, hold on, we're losing access to supply chains here because of lack of water, because of we've used all the raw materials there. So they had to start thinking, we need to think much cleverer than this and be much more sustainable in terms of how we operate. Okay, that's the first one. Regulation and legislation. That has been coming in for the last 20, 30 years, where you're seeing the damage being caused and governments are looking at who's accountable and who's going to sort it out. And now you've got a situation where companies are being taken to court and they're being fined billions of pounds to sort out the problem they've been caused. And that's just going to accelerate. This is going to continue now. The businesses are saying, right, we need to fix this. We can't continue to be at risk here because some fossil fuel companies in America cannot get insurance. They can't get cover because their practices are not purposeful. And the third lever is civil society. Civil society are not going to accept that businesses can't do anything about it. Businesses are going to be held to account by civil society and are increasingly being held to account. Okay. So those 3 things are the things that they're not going away. It's getting worse. So one of the kind of founding fathers of the whole movement of sustainability and climate change said that we have got 6 years. We had 10 years in 2020. We've got 6 years. And if we don't do this, life is going to get so much worse than we think. So, and there is a burning platform is a kind of overused phrase, but that's what we're on. And I think any business that thinks, we're going to pull back from purpose, either doesn't understand it or is going to be extinct.
Yes,
they're going to be out of business. So I think our business is communication and brand, and we leverage people's purpose. I think what's happened is it's going to be less in an advertising context. It's going to be more in a delivery context. So we are working with our clients about framing their purpose, and that helps focus their activity. It's not about framing that purpose, now let's do some advertising. We do some of that, but that's not really what we do. We're now actually framing it so they can focus.
So when we spoke, there was an example that you gave of, just a conversation that you were having with a financial services company, and I think it was an insurance company, and you were saying how you were helping them think, and maybe you can bring this to life, about just helping them reframe how to even think about their relationship with society. Do you want to bring that to life? Because I think it's just really helpful with a story to help people understand what this could look like. What does this evolution kind of look like from the point of view of your work, but also because it's in relationship to where the world is going and what companies are needing help with?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, in the finance sector is interesting because they're all saying the same thing. They're all saying financial well-being, or your financial future, or to help you prosper and us prosper. Everyone said the way they achieve it is focused purely on making as much money as possible, not how they make it, because that's you just want to get financial well-being and financial prosperity. Well, we're going to make as much money as we can for you, and so our challenge is asking them why they're doing that for the end user. But the end user, there's a price to pay for making money, and at the moment it's too expensive on society, on the environment. And so we're challenging them and saying, well, what is that process? There's an interesting challenge now. We're talking to some of with our clients who wouldn't really think about this is being regenerative businesses. So a regenerative business is if I take one out, I put two back in.
Yeah.
So banks don't think like that. But can you challenge a bank and saying how you're deriving your money from the companies you're deriving from? Can you ensure that if they're extracting X, they're putting back X plus one or more? And it's a very, very different way of, whoever thought, regenerative is a term used in agriculture, but whoever thought a bank would start saying, okay, yeah, let's think about that. Let's think about the impact we have and actually having a positive impact plus. Mm-hmm. And so I think the whole finance sector with ESG is kind of a broken system because it's being abused. It's been abused by, and it's a technical measures. It's a measure of status quo. It's not a measure of progress or ambition. So I think the commercial sector is going to have to get their head around how they are going to contribute to the solution. Everyone's looking for people with solutions. Everyone knows it's a terrible situation out there, but what are you going to do about it? And how can I be in that story? So putting people in the story is part of what we do. Is how do we allow people in society, your customers, your staff, your investors to be part of a story, which is a solution based. So, but I think banking is going to go through, and we've spoken to 2 or 3 of them, and they all said the same thing: is how do we reframe what we do? Because we want to do the right thing, but we're not quite sure what that means. So I think that sector's going to change.
It's interesting just to the banking sector as well, and actually back to this thing around purpose from the point of view of it, it's going to take a back shelf. I thought what was interesting from your experience as well of talking to so many of these financial services firms, how many of them are really struggling to find talent.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
That's been going for some time, and it's just increasing, and it is a real challenge. So these banks are driven by people and algorithms, but by people. If you can't get the best talent, they're going to struggle to deliver the quality of service that they're promising or return that they're promising. So that it's coming home to roost. I think the Milton Friedman philosophy of they have no obligation to society or community or whatever is coming home to roost that.
Yeah. What does a better world look like to you?
A better world is a world where businesses, civil society, and individuals, wide society and individuals, can all prosper, but they have a positive impact on the social issues we face and the environmental issues we face. So this isn't an either or. This has to sit together, that all those different stakeholders can have a positive impact on society and environment, but also have the most wonderful life, be successful, progress, innovation, whatever. But it doesn't have to be the expense of society and environment, which is what's been going on for the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. It's always, I don't think you have to do that at all. So it's going back to a place of balance.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting. In my book, I have to define what being human is. It's a loaded word, and particularly in AI. And when I start telling people about my book, you could see how it could go on in various, return on humanity. You could see it being an anti-AI book. It's not an anti-AI. It's like, I'm not an expert in AI. You could see it as like a human resources book, invest in your people. And it's not that either. And so, I'm defining, humanity, like being human. And for now, oh God, the number of iterations this has been through, and I'm still, you're going to see it because I'm going to send you my intro. It still needs work, but I see it in 3 ways. One is self-awareness. I think everyone needs to have self-awareness and be aware that you being you, not trying to be someone else and locking into your essence and your ways of being different. And knowing who you are and what makes you tick and what makes you special. It's so important that people know that, because it's with that, then you start to be able to find your purpose, and, it links up with the purpose of other people, etc. Then it's connection, because we're human beings. We need connection. We need to help people thrive in situations and feel connected, because if they don't, then they're not going to stay, or they're not going to feel happy, or they're not going to feel fulfilled. And then there's interdependence. And that's the third one. And I think that's a lot of what we do, because we connect the global South with the global North, and we help people understand that interdependence, but also it's understanding that decisions made in one place impact another. We are part of an ecosystem in the same way that the bees and the plants are. And we've kind of, with AI and systems and technology, we've kind of separated ourselves from that.
Yeah.
And we need to come back to that. And so that's kind of how I'm defining it. I don't know if it's clear enough yet in the book, but I'm getting there.
But I think that makes total sense. But what we say to clients and people we see is we put humanity into your brand and your business.
Yeah.
That's people say, what's purpose? And so actually it's putting humanity into your brand and your business. And
exactly.
that's fundamental to a good business.
Exactly.
You don't have to be a charity. You can actually operate if you put humanity into that. So
totally.
I think you're absolutely right. It's not just an HR thing. It's actually that humanity is so much more.
Exactly. Yeah. So why are businesses at the center of this? Because you just touched on it, but it's an important point. So you said it's not, you don't need to be a charity. Making profit isn't a bad thing. Business. Why in your mind is it important? And actually, interestingly, when you look at the story of good and, what Ideas Unlimited was focusing on, and then you moved to good, and it was a very thought through decision with that evolution. So why are businesses at the center of this? And why do they matter?
So the kind of glib answer is that they cause the problem, so they need to solve it. But actually, I don't kind of buy with that, because it kind of feels like a blame game. I think they have the greatest potential to change the world for the better, and they have, and it's not from lack of intent and good people. There are lots and lots of good people who want to do it. They're just trying to find their way. So I think far from purpose slowing down, I think it's going to accelerate. But I think people get it. And fundamentally, the people running these businesses are humans. They have feelings, they have values,
right.
and that's coming more and more in their decision-making process. So businesses are fundamental to the solution. Government has a role, but businesses have the greatest influence on our lives.
Totally. We have actually come to the end, but before I finish, I would like to just see, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to tell our listeners?
We're very cognizant of the fact that we are just a small part of the solution, and we can be an accelerator, we can be a catalyst, but businesses have to pick this up. And it's coming very, very fast at them. They either can pick up the wave or they're going to get smashed into the beach. So it is an exciting time. I just think we should face the future with optimism, and it's going to be challenging in many ways, but and I think good is placed well. We've got a lot of experience in businesses from all different sectors. I think we're placed well, and we're kind of having fun. We're enjoying it.
And you've been doing it for so long. I think that's the thing. I mean, you haven't just sort of started this. This has come from a place of authenticity and real belief for our listeners to know when the book does come out. There is, as I say, a great story about good there with a little bit more information. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. Until next time.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
Chris.
Bye.
Hey everyone, this is Philippa again. I hope you enjoyed listening. Now this is your chance to get involved with TIE. If you're looking to create better leaders, better companies, and a better world, that's just what we do by helping people tap into their greatest asset, their humanity. We have a number of corporate programs that impact a range of people, from individuals at a company to 500 people around a business. Or check out my book, Return on Humanity, Leadership Lessons from All Corners of the World. You'll find the answers to how business can truly become a positive force while remaining at the forefront of competition. You can find all the information you need on all of this at tieleadership.com. Get in touch and I can explain more. A huge thanks to Behena Vieira for co-producing this with me and for creating the music. I hope we'll meet again soon.